Modifiers. Possibly the best addition to ever come to Doors till this day, at least in my opinion. It encourages the player to try new challenges, get creative, and come up with their own, and it also encourages you to replay Doors with a different set of rules. Modifiers were added in August 26, 2023, to celebrate the game's first anniversary, and with the release of the content update, many new modifiers have been added and are also capable of being used in the mines. However, the content update and the modifiers update both came with two new badges. Not 5 stars, which is obtained by beating the hotel with at least a 50% modifier bonus, a rocky place, which is the same but with the mines, and what we are interested in today, Hotel Hell and a hard place, which require you to beat floor 1 and floor 2 respectively with at least a 150 modifier bonus. Now that does seem like a lot, and it is, but in this guide I will be teaching you how to choose your own set of modifiers, and some general advice to prevent you from choosing a set of modifiers that makes your life harder than it should be. Before we begin this guide though, there are some things I would like you to know. Firstly, I would recommend getting a rocky place and not 5 stars, so you can experiment with which modifiers work for you and you are good at. Secondly, this challenge requires decent skill in floor 1 and floor 2, so if you need practice with some areas on those floors, I would recommend you to practice the parts that you struggle with to have a better time in this challenge. In addition to this point, most modifiers require badges to be able to be used in your runs, such as crucifix badges or even not 5 stars and see you soon. Finally, I'll be listing some modifiers you don't want to use for the hotel, the mines, or modifiers that you shouldn't use under any circumstance. With all that said, let's begin! As stated in the intro, I will first list modifiers that you don't want to use under any circumstance due to their difficulty or due to the challenge that it presents when trying to use these modifiers with others. To begin with, never use any positive modifiers or any event modifiers, since that will cause you to need to add even more modifiers to meet the requirement of 150% modifier bonus, which just makes your life harder than it should be. In addition, some positive modifiers completely disable the ability to gain achievements, and we obviously don't want that because we are interested in acquiring the badges. All positive modifiers are the following: more stuff, good time, bug spray, didn't skip leg day, faster, 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 and maximum overdrive. All event modifiers that don't disable your progress include voice acting and trick or treat. Moving on, never use any modifiers that pick random modifiers, as this just makes your runs heavily inconsistent and RNG based. Since you can get positive modifiers or really bad modifiers that you haven't unlocked yet. And personally, I really hate RNG based challenges. The random modifier pickers include uh-oh, how unfortunate, and chaos. Never pick modifiers that affect the lights, since those are your main cues to announce some entity's arrivals. Even though you could raise your gamma to almost get rid of the effects of the lights modifiers, we want to make sure we can beat this challenge in any platform. All lights modifiers include electrical work, bad electrical work, power shortage, and lights out. Never pick any modifiers that affect guiding light, as my boy here is really helpful generally throughout both floors. Although you could pick Gone Fishing if you are really desperate for a 5% modifier boost, though keep in mind that this will make the seek chases harder, especially if you have low graphics. Modifiers that affect guiding light include Gone Fishing and Soundproofing. Never pick the bad ventilation modifier, because having a very limited vision is never generally a good idea, and it isn't well paired with most modifiers. And I'm honestly surprised that this modifier only gives you a 10% bonus. Never pick the Nowhere to Hide modifier, since this just makes you dependent on the random act closets that spawn in the rooms, and also makes your runs incredibly RNG based, and that is something we never really want. Never pick jamming modifiers since this just makes it incredibly hard to hear important sound cues, since it muffles all of the audio in the game and plays over Jeff's jingle the entire round. And it honestly gets annoying pretty quickly, even though Jeff's jingle is a bang. Never pick any modifiers that reduce speed in some form, since these aren't mixed well with most modifiers and usually make some boss fights a pain in the ass, such as the figure encounters, door 150, and door 200. Speed reducing modifiers include my legs are killing me, my knees are killing me, and injuries. Never pick the modifier of I'm tiptoeing here, since this just makes timing your hiding from rush very hard, if not impossible. And once again, it is a modifier that doesn't go well with most modifiers, since you literally cannot hear rush. I pray for you if you make it to the greenhouse with this modifier. Never pick Destiny Still Alive, since it isn't well paired with the majority of modifiers, and puzzle rooms with this modifier are very hard to do. Finally, don't even think about adding the worst time ever to your modifier combo, since it basically means you're stuck with a rush that spawns like if he was in the greenhouse for the entire goddamn game. This would be all for this section. Let's now move on to the guide detailing how to beat Hotel Hell. However, before we begin this section, I will do a quick fire section to tell you about the modifiers that you shouldn't use under any circumstance in the hotel, since they aren't much, but there are some modifiers that can be activated in the hotel, but not in the mines, and it isn't the other way around before you ask. Never use the Make Haste modifier, since this just makes your runs pretty much impossible. I know it was nerfed a ton as the updates rolled in, but it still isn't a good pick. It just puts unnecessary pressure on you that is easily avoidable. Even after the nerfs, this modifier is hard on its own, so I don't think you will make it that far with a lot of other things to worry about. Never pick any modifiers that enable snare to spawn, since it can really screw you up and it also makes your runs RNG based. Though not as much as some other modifiers, since snare spawns in a completely random location in every room, sometimes making it near impossible to avoid in some scenarios. Modifiers that enable snare spawn are Watch Your Step, Are Those Pancakes, and I Love Pancakes. And for the love of God, don't pick the modifier I'm everywhere. It is literal hell. Now we can finally move on to how to pick your modifiers for Hotel Hell. Though keep in mind that some modifiers don't really work well paired with others. So here's a diagram of the modifiers you shouldn't mix together. I believe I should explain each one. The first one isn't a good combo because having less access or none to health while having an entity that could give you unavoidable damage is a risk sometimes you don't want to take. The second one is a terrible combination because you have less time to be in rooms and you have to search for keys more often or always, which puts a lot of pressure on you, which could lead you to doing silly mistakes. The third combo is terrible because having an entity that forces you to look for it in the ceiling, while having an entity that punishes you for looking at it, is just a recipe for chaos. The last combo is horrible because having Hide be aggressive while having entities that can rebound is bound to cause you trouble. If you pick this, you will have to time it really well to survive some encounters, or sometimes you can time it perfectly and still die for it, which almost forces you to use safe spots, which aren't always available. Since the content update added a lot of new modifiers, there's a considerably longer list to choose from as opposed to before this update. To make Hotel Hell easier, you want to increase the difficulty of the entities you master and can deal with ease during normal gameplay. For example, if you specialize in dealing with ambush, you are going to want to add the modifiers Back for Seconds and After Image. Though keep in mind some additional modifiers might make these encounters harder. Using the previous example, using Rent Steel on top of these two modifiers significantly increases the difficulty of ambush because you would need to perfectly time your hide to avoid being kicked out by hide, and at the same time deal with ambush. So what if you can't deal with entities at their maximum difficulty? Just avoid adding some specific modifiers. Though I would recommend keeping the modifiers that give you more knob bonus, but still make encounters manageable for you. Coming back to the previous example, if you can't manage your hiding times, but you can manage an aggressive ambush, then just add back per seconds and after image, but don't add rent due, since rent due only gives you a 15% knob bonus, whilst back per seconds and after image combined give you a total of 20% knob bonus. Now let's picture another example. Let's say you are good at dealing with Screech. So you added the Think Fast modifier, but you also added the modifier I'm everywhere, and you are constantly dying to Screech since he is a constant problem and harder to deal with in this combo. In this scenario, we would remove the modifier which you aren't comfortable with, or have most trouble since both modifiers give the same amount of knob bonus. However, what about the entities that you are good at, but you wouldn't say you have mastered? For this case, we would add less modifiers, and said modifiers would only increase the entity's difficulty slightly. For example, let's say you are good at dealing with eyes, but you don't want him to spawn in every single room. In this case, we would just add the nosy modifier to our list. According to what we said, our modifier list should look like this. Now, due to the fact that modifiers can affect similar conditions, or be stronger variants of some modifiers, there are plenty of modifiers that are mutually exclusive, which is why I divided said modifiers from the ones that aren't mutually exclusive. Now, you still have to keep in mind that from this list of modifiers, there are some combos that don't go too well for you personally. This is why experimenting with modifiers is so important, because it shows you what you're good at and capable of doing, and which modifiers you don't like or just struggle with. I will show you some lists of modifiers that target specific skills, but keep in mind these may not be modifiers you specialize in. For this modifier combo, we will assume you are overall good at dealing with entities, and want to make them harder to adjust to your skill level. So it could look more or less like this. In this other example, we will assume you aren't too good with most entities, but you can deal with extra conditions attached to your run. So it would look more or less like this. You are free to use any of these lists to test out how your run goes, but I heavily encourage you to make adjustments to fit to your skills, so that you can create a modifier combo that perfectly fits with you. Now we go on to talk about a harder place, and there's actually a considerable amount of things that are to be said about it that distinguish it from Hotel Hell. First and foremost, there is a shorter list of modifiers to choose from, because as said previously, there are modifiers that can be used in the hotel but not in the mines. The reasoning for this varies. Most of them are modifiers which give abilities to some entities that are given to them by default in the mines, such as Rush Around, that gives the ability for Rush to come from the front in the hotel. I'm Everywhere, which makes Screech spawn anywhere at any time in the hotel, which he can unfortunately do in a normal playthrough in the mines. However, some modifiers are not selectable in the mines for the sole reason that they are incompatible with said floor, such as any snare modifiers, since that was proven to not work in floor 2 long ago. Modifiers that make key spawn more often, as there are no keys in the mines, as well as the make haste modifier that is not really thought out to work for floor 2. Another thing we should talk about are the increased number of entities. Since the mines are a direct sequel from the hotel, almost all of the major hotel entities return for the mines with added exclusive entities for floor 2. This means that a harder place is logically harder due to the decreased modifier list and the number of entities being higher than for Hotel Hell. Based on this observation, I would heavily disencourage you to add any Screech or Eyes modifiers, as you would be buffing entities that already cause trouble due to some insane combos they can have in 4-2, such as Giggle plus Eyes and Screech in any major encounter. I would also avoid any modifiers that buff the speed of node entities, due to the fact that RNG will screw you up if you decide to use said modifiers. This is because some floor 2 rooms have genuinely garbage hiding spot placements, so even if you react in time, you might still not make it. In addition, I also don't recommend any item related modifier for this challenge. Unlike Hotel Hell, items play a vital role in a hard place, as they help you strategize, manage threats easier, and remove some pressure off yourself in some scenarios. To add on to this point, you can also get pretty stacked in this floor, and even if you don't, the basic items such as lockpicks, glow sticks, and the bandage pack will prove to be of great help while attempting this challenge. Glow sticks allow you to lure away the figure, take a good look at the room, and have the ability to see where you're going when dealing with gloom bats. Lockpicks can lead you to getting great loot and let you skip generator rooms and that annoying ass figure encounter. Bandage packs are a great tool for stacking up HP, and they make this challenge more forgiving, as they can get you out of a pinch with great effectiveness, since you can stack up to 10 bandages with this beast. I swear bro, this item is underrated. I would also recommend using the modifier that buffs figure, get back here, and a health modifier that doesn't limit your max health. Figure isn't that major of a problem in the mines, so you don't have to deal with him for too long. The health modifier can be cheesed and strategically avoided by buying a bandage pack in a free-run shop and using it immediately after you spawn. I would also recommend buffing any of the new entities that spawn in the mines, as the difficulty increase feels natural since this is a floor 2 challenge. This isn't a big deal, but I personally don't encourage you to disable Guiding Light's glow hints, because they are really helpful in boss fights and using a dread modifier, since rooms are considerably bigger in the mines compared to the hotel. Finally, I would like to bust a myth about this challenge. A90 is not worse in a hard place compared to Hotel Hell, since it was updated a while ago to not damage you even if it detects inertia. It now focuses on inputs, although I don't know what the deal is when you get in a closet. I don't really know, bro. Remember to try out multiple modifier combos to see what's best for you. Heck, you are welcome to try some modifiers I didn't recommend if they work for you. The key is to focus on what you can deal with and not in terms of modifiers. Before I send you off, I wanted to emphasize the fact that Hotel Hell and A Hard Place are very hard badges. Yes, you will die a lot. Yes, you will do stupid mistakes that you will have to learn from. And yes, you might get frustrated. Although, remember, this is all about having fun. If you really don't feel like playing at the moment, take a break and come back whenever you feel like it. Don't be too hard on yourself, and if you simply aren't having fun doing this challenge at all, just quit. No one is forcing you to play. It's okay to struggle. As long as you keep persisting, you will get the badges eventually, and nothing is really stopping you from coming back to this challenge after taking a break or just think that you quit. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll get to see you guys next time.